Hey everybody, this presentation here is about content strategy. This is a presentation I delivered at the EDTC conference about a couple weeks ago. And the idea was to understand how content strategy can deliver better service to your clients at a better cost and then improve your relationships with them because you're going to deliver ongoing service. So the idea started off with, as I was trying to figure out how to contextualize content strategy, which is kind of an abstract thought process. I was listening to my daughter and she asked me an interesting question. She's 8 years old and they ask a lot of questions, but this one was, Daddy, who invented music? Anybody know who invented music? I don't know who invented music. And I tried to answer by lying, which is always a good strategy with your kids because then they stop asking questions. In this particular case, I lied, but it got the thought process going as to who created content strategy, because somebody had to be the first person to create it, right? So before we get too far into it, I think it's important for me to explain what content strategy is, what the legal definition is. Now, a lot of the ideas and concepts you'll see come out of this book and a couple of other books. You guys will get this presentation later, I'll give it to you. But content strategy is an official accepted definition in our industry. That is, it plans for the creation, publication, governance of useful, usable content. And that's what I'm going to be talking about here, and then we'll circle around back at the end. Content strategy, though, relative to marketing, is a relatively young field. That is, we can think about strategy. If you went to school for marketing or business, you know strategy. There are books about strategy. David Ogilvy wrote one, and there are books that go back further and further. And these primary texts are the books that we're using in our industry to try to define what content strategy is and actually how to do it and deliver good service to clients. But I thought that if we were going to do a real historical perspective, it would help to go back a little bit to try to understand where content strategy started, to go back to the earliest texts that defined content strategy. And I created a small case study that defines how we come up with this concept that content is king. It's such an odd term. We all accept that content is king, and we say it in our meetings, and we all kind of know what it means implicitly, but do we really know where it came from? And I started to look back through different textbooks, and you can go back, but I realized that in order for me to do this properly, I had to go back 600,000 years to find the first evidence of content strategy. And I met Grok. Grok, what I'm going to explain to you, was our first content strategist and health educator. You see, Grok was a caveman, as you can see from this picture. And he had a small problem with his tribe. They lived in this beautiful, lush valley. And the problem that they were running into was there were so many different plants that they could not remember which were the plants that were good and healthy and would help you grow, to the ones that would get you sick, to ultimately the ones that would get you dead. Now, this is a problem, especially when there weren't that many people in the village and they were trying to expand because other tribes were getting bigger. They needed their tribe to get bigger. So Grok tried to explain to the tribe which ones were bad. But in not having a shared language, that is, they didn't really speak yet, without having a shared language, how is he going to communicate that this was an important health message that they needed to pay attention to? So Grok started small. He would start with small communities, and then he would try to make associations. He would say, you see this tree? We're going to bury this guy here because he died because of this tree. But it still wasn't a very efficient way to communicate. It's a dinosaur. It's true. So one night, Grok had an idea. That's the light bulb over, so they didn't have light bulbs yet. And with all great ideas, he tried to experiment a little bit. The first thing Grok did was he said, let me take this brilliant idea and commit it to some place where everybody would go. And in this case, it was the cave wall. So Grok's solution was to bring people into the cave wall and teach them, this is the good berry, this is the bad berry. And it became an educational tool because everybody in the tribe at one point or another had to go into the cave. When it was cold, when it was raining, when there were saber-toothed tigers, they had to go into the cave. So Grok's solution was to remind people where they were. Now, this was great because Grok's tribe was thrilled. They finally knew which berries to avoid, and they celebrated Grok. Grok was like the guy, man. He was a health educator, and he communicated an extremely important and relevant message to his tribe. Grok's message worked not because he complicated it, but because he used a language that the destination target audience could easily understand and relate to. It was very simple. It was a really binary thing. Either it was good to eat or it wasn't good to eat, and it worked for that target tribe. And his tribe grew, and they expanded and began to grow in size and population, and this was really important, especially at the dawn of time. In fact, Grok had a daughter. Grok had a daughter, and like all fathers, he hated his daughter's boyfriend. And this particular one is when they tell Grok that they want to move away on their own, even though Grok thinks that they're too young. And this is the first evidence of a teenage daughter going like this, "Ah, Dad." So if you've ever heard your teenage daughter do this, you know that it's genetically encoded in them. They can't help it. It's been happening since caveman time. So even though Grok had to accept his daughter's decision, he had to now figure out a way to help his daughter stay healthy even after they've left the cave. Now think about it. When the cave was small and the tribe was small, everybody could go into the cave. But now he had a new problem. The tribe was growing and his daughter wanted to move to a new valley. How does he solve this problem? So Grok did something that was very unique. As the first marketer, he thought, how do I take my message when it's not a direct berry that I can identify or a berry that I can identify as bad? He created the Good Berries brand. He wasn't a very good speller. He created the Good Berries brand. And this Good Berries brand could be applied to any food. It could be applied to meat, it could be applied to vegetables, it could be applied to almost anything. And it would say that this got Grok's seal of approval. This was a major jump because there was branding involved and it was a visual reminder. Now, Grok had to figure out now how to communicate to his tribe that was on the go. For a mobile audience, if they stayed close, leaves were fine. He actually would take the Good Berries message, put it on a leaf, and people would be able to carry it around for him. And it was great for the people that lived in this valley or the valley next door. But in the fall, the leaves started to crumble and fall apart. They weren't very durable. They were cheap and affordable, but he really wasn't able to do too much with them. But then Grok said, I need something that's a little bit more enduring. What about a rock, the Grok rock? And he created the first branded rock, which he would help people put this Grok rock underneath the tree with berries or near a bush with berries, and this would tell people if they had good berries or not. And this was huge. The only problem was the Grok rock wasn't very portable. It was durable, but you couldn't carry it very far. So he needed a better solution. So Grok thought about his tribe. He realized that they were all rather vain and they all wore clothes. So Grok said, with these clothes, I know that everybody's going to be wearing clothes at one point or another. And he could take my Good Berries message and he could place it on a shirt or a loincloth, and then I can see from the people around me which were the berries that were good in this valley. Grok was so celebrated that he became the king of his tribe. As the first health educator and the first content marketer, Grok was recognized as not just saving his tribe, but helping it to grow stronger, more powerful, and more competitive in the marketplace. This, my friends, is exactly how we came to the concept that content is king. So if you ever want to communicate this back to your clients, now you know the story of why content is king. But what does it mean to us now in the present? We still use branding with a simple iconic message, and we still find different ways to affix it to things, be it commercials, television shows, print pieces, outdoor. Everywhere you can think of, there's a logo, and you can take that logo and people will have an immediate recognition. If you've taken the time to say, here's what this logo means, here's how you communicate this message, you place it in different places. But the only problem is now with the exploding internet, this is a graphic that shows how much content is created in just 60 seconds on the internet. Because we're not just creating content, and CNN's not creating just creating content. It's bloggers, it's Twitter people, it's people creating viral videos. In 60 seconds, a staggering amount of information is being created. How do we as marketers get our message through all of this clutter in a way that makes sense for our users? Our users are also not just focused on one channel. In the early days when I first started building websites, we knew that people would be on a desktop. They might not have speakers, okay. That would be our lowest common denominator, no sound. But what about people? We assumed they had a monitor at least 15 inches or larger, and then the monitors got bigger and bigger. This became the way we delivered content. But then all of a sudden, content is now being formatted and reformatted in real time for different mediums, stuff that we didn't always anticipate. And the content that we created a few years ago may be locked for that 15-inch monitor. Also, in our industry, we always think of the doctor sitting in front of that monitor. Either they're at home or they're with their staff in the office and they've got a monitor. But what about how they educate patients? You know, we know that they're using it in the waiting room, in the exam room rather, with patients. We know that they're using it with their peers to communicate. We know that in certain cases, doctors are logging in and using details during surgeries. That's a fact. And then we also know that sometimes patients are getting materials from doctors while they wait so that they can better understand their health condition and then ask more informed questions later. How are we supposed to format content so that it works on all these different channels? Well, really content strategy, and this is probably the most complex illustration we have, but it's a really important one because content strategy starts with this thought that you start from here, a content strategy, creating channel agnostic content. That is, content that really doesn't care where it's going to be and reformats itself in a way that's malleable enough so that it will move along to the audience realities, what their needs are, their time of day, their time shifting, the kinds of devices that they're going to be using it on, the channels that they're going to be exploring it on. And then it dynamically generates content that allows them to consume it the way they want with our message still intact. And that's huge. And that's a way of saying we're not going to recreate content every time we have a new channel because that's just crazy and that's a waste of our clients' money. Better use of our money is create great content that works and then modify it just enough so it works in those new channels. So the way you have to think about your content is very, very basic. And I create this little Venn diagram so you can see where the opportunity is because consumers make decisions based on the content and the information that they have. So first you think about what you have. Brand manufacturers think that people buy by franchise. For the most part, maybe certain doctors and large practices might, and maybe payer situations they might, but ultimately a patient probably only needs one or two things that you have. Think about a car company. They make, you know, Toyota makes 26, 27 different models. You need one, maybe two for your family. So it starts off with what you have overlaid by what they want. So now you've sort of made this cross section, what you have, this large universe of stuff over what they want. But the ultimate decision, what I call the vendo of opportunity, is right here. What you have, what they want, overlaid by the content that you have that describes it in a way that makes sense for them. If you can cross over these three circles, this is how you're going to deliver your message. Ultimately, if what you have and what they want doesn't match up and they don't know about it, how can they possibly make a decision or make a purchase? They can't, because if you have no content, then they're not going to be able to make that decision. So you have a very small window of opportunity in which to communicate your message. So you have to get all those circles to overlay perfectly. Now, consumer marketing, content marketing is just like a first date. When you think about a website, it's really kind of like a first date. See, statistics will tell us people make a decision between 0.5 and 9 seconds if they like your website and they're going to stay. I mean, that's really not a lot of time. And the same thing happens when you meet somebody. You immediately look at the clothes they're wearing, their face, and you decide, do I like this person or do I not like this person? And that immediately tells you if you're ready to continue that relationship. It's a snap decision, something you might not even instinctually recognize, but it happens. Now, a first date is very generic. That is, you go to a neutral place, you talk about neutral things, nothing too deep dive, nothing too personal. You share the right amount of information. Problem with content marketers and marketers in general is we like to go right in for the kill. You ever go to a website and they immediately throw a survey at you? Like, what? Tell us what you think of our survey. Would you like to register for our email newsletter? And you're like, wait. You're asking me too much. It becomes an assault on your personal being. You're wondering, like, slow down. Give me a minute to acclimate myself and decide if this is the right place for me. So while the first date, very generic, second date, a little bit more custom. We start finding, oh, you like Thai food also? Oh, yeah, I know this place. So if you get past that first date, you might get to the second date. And then it becomes more custom. The conversation hopefully becomes a little bit more in depth, more personal. You start to be finding people that you know in common, places that you've gone to, aspirations and dreams. You can also overshare. I'm going to give you an example. I was, when I presented this at the conference, the lady at the front desk, and what do you call that person at the front desk? Reception, thank you. It's good. Says to me, oh, Mr. Scalera, I'm really glad that you came. You may notice that the Hotel is a bit under construction. There are 3 floors under construction. We're renovating. I'm like, oh, that's really great. And they said 4, 5, and 6 is under renovation. You're on 7, which was already renovated. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. You know, I'm starting to feel it. And she says, so you may hear some noise, but at night, don't worry about it. The noise will go away. We don't work through the night. And as she's handing me my key, she goes, oh, look at this. Only 6 or 7 people have slept in that bed before you have. Yeah, I know. You know what I mean? Like, she had me right up to recently renovated to oversharing. So content marketing is a little like a first date. You have to share the right amount without oversharing, and that's how you start to build that relationship. But content is much more than text. Just like that relationship that you have, it's more than the words you say. It's the clothing that you wear on your date. It's the way you conduct yourself. It's the way you speak, and it's the things you say. But we know there's 2 types of languages. There's the spoken language, and then there's body language. That body language tells more about you than you realize. And while people don't always know exactly what you're saying with your body language, we know instinctually because we have evolved to understand body language cues, and that's huge. And that's why content is much more than text. Now, it's a little deceiving because most content strategy conversations start from copy and editorial, and that's why we get this misconception that content strategy is only about copy. But the reality is that decision at 0.5 to 9 seconds is made with design and graphics. It's made by video. There may be audio, and they may not be just discovering it on your website. They may be discovering a tool or an app that you've generated that gets them to the site. So content is far more than text, and we have to stop thinking about it as siloed things. It is a holistic approach. It's a holistic approach that encompasses everything that we create in this agency that our clients need to communicate that easy message that helps people to understand what they have by what they want overlaid by the content. And content isn't always consumed the way you think. Honestly, guys, we don't think about this guy. We never market to this guy. We don't market to the guy sitting on a bus stop with an iPad. And we certainly don't market to this guy with the double screen thing going on. He's watching a TV show, he's tweeting, and he's reading our information. This is more common than you think. When we think of playing video, we dream that it's going to be in front of a good monitor with good sound, but this guy's on an airplane. And we certainly don't think of the lady about to run over the passengers as she's getting her ECRM message. But that's part of the reality of how people consume message. If we think about what we're trying to build together, we're trying to build together with clients, we're collaborators, we're partners. What we're trying to build is a dream house. If this were your dream house, you might have found the location. You might be like, this is where I want to live. You wouldn't just start ripping down the house and start nailing pieces of wood together, right? That's just crazy. It doesn't make sense. You wouldn't even relate to the idea. What you start with is a floor plan. You start with architectural drawings. And an architectural drawing isn't just the blueprint of the floor plan, right? You think about how it looks on the plot of land, how far it will be from the sidewalk, what kind of trees exist. And when you start to think about this, you start to also think about what's on the second floor. We're going to have the baby's room, or we're going to have a walk-in closet. Who wants a walk-in closet? Yeah, me too. Okay, so you start to think about where things are going to go, where the cars are going to be parked inside the house. Well, we have the same thing. It's like a metaphor. It's what an architectural drawing is for a house, a sitemap is for a website. Now, it's a very basic framework, right? We don't think about the decorations when we do this, or how it's going to fit together, or the colors, or the carpets, and we're not thinking about it here. What we're doing is we're giving a guideline that will help us frame out essentially what our site will look like. And you guys have probably seen this. It's a sitemap that translates into basically the navigation. This is our homepage and our top-level navigation, and the navigation that drills down. And that's conceptually how we start to approach the story that we're going to be telling over the long term. If you don't have an architectural drawing, sometimes you end up with a house like this or a website like this. So what do? We start to think about ways that we can build out our house in a way that makes a lot of sense for the people that are going to live there. Now, in pharma, we have a lot of problems in that we can't necessarily share stuff with, client stuff. And even within this room, some of you work within competing brands. But we worked on a brand about a year ago, which was kind of personal to me. I have a hereditary condition. Don't worry, you can't catch it. And this meant a lot to me because a person that has a condition really understands a disease and the patient journey better than other people. And you're able to take it to the next level. So when we got to work on the brand, I really understood the patient journey because I actually had it. we picked up a brand called lycanthrium, which is indicated for once monthly lunar lycanthropy, which is much better known as werewolfism. It's true. I've suffered with this for many, many years, more years than I realized. And lycanthrium actually helps with the symptoms of werewolfism. It doesn't get rid of it, but it does help prevent some of the symptoms. And lycanthrium case study will illustrate how we approach the content, and then we have communicated the message and ultimately the CRM campaign for the client. Now we think about patient acquisition buckets. This is sort of the patient journey, right? Everybody has some variation of this. Patients start off as seekers, then they start considering their condition and their treatment, they go for help, and then they have an active solution. Everybody has some variation on this. Now, but the client and the strategy team built this out. So the strategists and the user experience people sat down with the client and said, what do you want to accomplish? And they said they wanted to talk to these different audiences along the way and then get people to move along the patient journey. So first you think about seeker, and clients always want to start where they think the client did, or the patient is. What they don't realize is patients have symptoms long before they realize they're looking for help. So when I would wake up naked in the woods covered in blood, it's a good visual. I was a pre-seeker. I didn't realize that I had a problem. I just thought, the fangs, the hair, the blood, and howling at the moon was just normal for single guys. But it turned out it was much more than that, and I was starting to look up information about it. But then there's also the patient seeker. Once you start to realize you see a commercial that triggers something, or you see something, a banner ad on a site, and you start to go, maybe it's actually something. And they start seeking information about lycanthropy. Or there's the caregiver. That is, my wife started to say, you know what, I think this is a problem. So she encouraged me, and we became together seekers. But the idea is to step from this first step of seeker to considering. Considering is, wow, I think I may be a werewolf. And now I have to think about a doctor who treats this. How do I find a doctor? Is there a find a doctor finder on a website? Is there information about how to find a doctor and how to talk to your doctor? So within here, there's a whole continuum of things that we're moving people along. Interestingly enough, it's the same person or people moving along the continuum. Ultimately, once you've gone to considering and you've gone to the doctor, you've printed your doctor discussion guide and you say to your doctor, here are my symptoms, here it happens once a month, it's usually around a full moon, and here's what we need to do. Now you move into an active solution. He does the blood tests, he confirms that you have werewolfism, and he moves you into an active solution. Now with that active solution, sometimes there's competitors, right? It might be a switch, it might be a generic, and ultimately in this case, the client wanted to move ahead with the silver bullet CRM program that would help people stay on their treatment and say, you know what, I am moving from a seeker to considering to active. So that was our goal, and we needed to build a content strategy to reflect that. So the first thing we did was, in content strategy, we do an asset audit. So we looked at their existing website assets and all their existing print assets, their commercials, their collateral, their trifolds, their Slim Jims, and we started to create an asset audit. And we listed, this is an actual asset audit, and this is actually one of their sites, and we started to say, what assets do you have that will actually address your strategic goals? How are you going to move people along, and how much content do you have? Well, guess what? They had a lot more content than they realized. There was stuff sitting on hard drives, there were pre-recorded patient testimonials, there were eKOL testimonials, there was conference materials, there was a lot of stuff. They didn't need to recreate the wheel. What they needed to do was leverage the stuff they had, and what we did was we organized it in a way to help the client to see, here's the content that you have that you don't have to create again, and here's a gap analysis. If you really want to move somebody from considering to active treatment, here are the 3 or 4 assets that you're going to need and the channels that are going to go on, and here's how they could be amortized across other channels, including mobile and social. This was huge because this asset audit became our roadmap. Then right after that, we created a content matrix. Now, content matrix is a lot like an editorial calendar. If you guys have ever created an editorial calendar, you know what it's like. But essentially, what this does is it goes one step further. It creates relationships. It says, if I'm creating an asset that's going to go on the website, will it go on the mobile device? Will it go on the video? Will it go on YouTube? Will it be shared somehow, some other way? Or will it become a social asset? Your content matrix also helps you to understand where your content will live, and if it ever has to come down, and we've all been in the situation where content has had to be removed or has gone toxic. In the old days, the rep would go back to the doctor's office, pick up those printouts, and drop off additional printouts. In the day of digital, it's a lot different. We can sync new content. So the content matrix helped us to build relationships between all of our content assets so that we were able to help the client to understand and maximize the investment they already had. What we created was the Lycanthrian brand footprint, and some of you have seen this, but many of you have not. This is essentially a one view, almost like a floor plan, of what Lycanthrian would become. When we started out, they were just lycanthrian.com. That's it. They didn't have anything else. But what we helped them to understand was if people are moving from seeker to considering, we had to give them information, unbranded information that helped them to understand you're not alone, you're not crazy, and there is a solution. And they were able to immerse themselves in information and stories and patient testimonials, and they were able to actually talk sometimes off-brand, because in an unbranded situation, you could just talk about generally related things. And then the patient unbranded site was supported by a whole host of drivers. They still were doing print materials because print for them was still valid for this audience. They were driving with banners and search engine marketing. They had sponsorships, and they were talking about it in conferences for consumers. And they were getting people into this environment that said, you're not alone, you're not crazy. And then if they were interested, they would move from this unbranded situation into the branded environment. And this is where we gave them the embrace. We said, you found the place you were looking for. We'll help you find a doctor who can treat with Lycanthrian. And then we supported it with another universe of satellites, starting from the social, which is how that message would be shared for people who would discover it. And if they were really excited about it and Lycanthrian helped them, they have a way to evangelize it, to share their experiences and say, I feel better. You think about the social element, and then the other drivers. Once again, they had print, banners, search, sponsorships, and conferences. But we were also talking to the doctors. We didn't need to take the doctors to unbranded. They understood the condition. We took them to the TLC, a locked section, which is the Lycanthrian Council, where we would say, you know what, Moondance Pharma supports it, Medscape supports it, and these were our drivers at launch that would help them to understand how we were going to embrace their brand with ongoing message so nobody could miss it. And then we built our information architecture. You notice that this came after we thought about our brand footprint. We didn't just start creating content, and we didn't just randomly start putting information together. We thought about holistically what we were going to accomplish. Strategy happens way up here, right? You don't just start doing things and writing message. You think about what you want to say. And we did it the same way. We didn't start our information architecture. By the way, this is the information architecture just because you guys are in the business. This is the home page, and then this is the navigation, and then these are the drill down sub-pages that were in there. And we recognize that information architecture isn't a one-time thing, and you don't do sites the way you used to do them when we did them. We used to literally put last updated 2004, and we felt like if we updated once a year, that was pretty good. Well, that's not how websites are updated anymore. We thought about the dynamic nature of the marketplace. That is, there are forces happening all the time that change the nature of people's perception of their disease, their condition, and then there's other competitors in the marketplace that are coming all the time, and we also didn't want a website that was dead. So we thought about phase 2. We also reflected our business goals. That is, if you have a strategy and you're putting out tactics, if you can't measure it, how do you know if you're successful? How do you know when it's time to pop a bottle of champagne or put your resume on Monster? The only way to do that is to create measurable goals. And by setting up those measurable goals, guess what? This is the most important thing. Creative people knew what the business goals were, and we're all working together toward that same idea. It wasn't account folks and strategists who knew it, and they were just, they would impart it as they would have the discussion. We really were able to create copy that drove people to these key performance indicators. They were measurable. We knew which ones was the number 1, number 2, and number 3. And the creatives were able to go, well, yeah, here's how we can actually get people from this page to this page. We also recognize that people don't navigate our brand story. We talk about our brand story like it's so important and so precious. And it is, really is. But people don't navigate websites like it's a storybook. Early websites, very early websites, were structured like this. You came in the home page, you go into the first section, and click the next section, and you walk through it like it was a storybook. We had this idea that that's how people would navigate. It wasn't true. People came in and navigated any way they wanted. They came into the home page, they bounced around, and they left. Now, in an instance like this, we might look at this and go, oh man, that was a failure. This failed. The person came in, they only made 2 clicks. They 1, 2, and they were out. But in reality, since we knew there was a key performance indicator, we knew what the goal was. We knew the strategy team was aligned with the creative team. If we got them to here, to the symptom app tracker, and then got them to the Apple Store to download that app, we had a huge win. What we did was we streamlined their experience. We didn't bore them with stuff that wasn't important. We got them to exactly what they wanted. And then interestingly enough, people don't always come to your homepage. The advent of Google meant that Google doesn't really care about your homepage. I mean, you know, they care, but they care more about getting people to the right place. So if somebody searched for like Canthrian side effects, Google doesn't take them to your homepage and then hope that you click on the right place and then get them out. Google will take them right to the side effects page. But now once again, our creative people were saying, you know what? Let's get them to our identified key performance indicators. Once again, this wasn't a lose. They didn't hit this and leave. What they did was they hit this and they looked up the discount card and they were like, this is what I wanted. So we were starting to create content and paths and experiences that made sense for the audience. So our content strategy is essentially business planning for content. Content is no longer this thing that happens. It's a measurable thing that goes according to your business strategy. And again, when we start to build out our content matrix, we start to think about phase 1 and phase 2. Here's where your big cost savings is. You take this home with you. Lord of the Rings was made all at once, the entire trilogy. They filmed it all at once, and they edited as they went. You should be doing the same thing. You should be saying to your clients, look, we know we're going to do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and we know we're going to have a CRM campaign. Why are we going to put the content up there, publish it, clap our hands, and then 6 months later get together, have a summit, have another conversation, restart, there's new creatives? That's just wrong. The new way to do it is to think in advance all the things that you're going to want to do, from the phased launches to content personalization. You can personalize content in ways that we see every day when we go on Amazon and eBay and different sites. Sites don't have to just be completely anonymous. And it could be overt, like a registration if somebody's registering and they wanted to customize it, or it can be subtle, where we know that there's new assets that we think that they might want to see, or they can customize by adding ratings. We are still pharma compliant. We're not giving them two-way feedback, but we can give them better service. We have to think about maintenance. Folks, if you've ever experienced one of these maintenance emergencies, you know how painful it is. We had a client, I can't tell you who it is, but they had one asset that had to be removed from a couple of pages. They didn't have a maintenance or emergency strategy. Their solution was take down the entire .com. And for almost 2 months, instead of having a place in the marketplace where we cut those pages and redirected them internally, you know, could have happened on Christmas Eve. If you have a strategy and you have a plan, you'll know what to do during an emergency. Well, they lost their site for 2 months. That's just crazy. Content strategy also considers content management and databases. In this day and age, as technologists, we are very comfortable with the idea that a content management system of some kind is backing up our site. Our creative teams are starting to really embrace this as well, because you understand HTML, the old way we did HTML and Flash was very flat. This is very dynamic. And by understanding the back end, our creative services people actually create much more engaging, involving content. If we come around here, we start thinking about the actual hands-on part of the content. Let me take a drink, hold on. There's no vodka in there at all. Meta tags. This is how Google finds the content on your site. Not just the content that's on your site, but how you tag things. PDFs. Pharma loves PDFs, but they hate to think about it as what the P means. Portable. If you create a 9 or 15 megabyte PDF that's been flattened as a series of pictures that are collected that aren't tagged, what's the point of making a PDF? All you're doing is creating a locked asset. Why don't you just make a JPEG? At this point, we're starting to say, look, why don't you create PDFs that are actually portable, actually useful and usable to the people that you're trying to give it to? If a caregiver wants to share an asset with a loved one, they can share a portable asset that allows somebody to go, yeah, that's actually what I was looking for. And they can put it on their device and read it whenever they want. We have to think about their linking strategy. How do you know what to link to if you don't know what the targets are? We're trying to now say ahead of time, let's think about the targets and then how that linking works and then how to cross-link it. Analytics. If I can tell you one thing today, go home with the idea that nothing you should do anymore shouldn't have some sort of analytics measurement against it. Everything we do now is measurable, and if you start with the end in mind and you work with the analytics team, be it, you should know that everything is measurable, and if you start with the end in mind, you'll know when you've been successful and if the return on investment that your client made is a positive ROI. And conversions are the same thing. That is, define what a conversion is. What does a conversion mean to you? Does it mean they've registered for your CRM campaign? You've gotten that second date, that third date? Well, whatever that is, define that and talk to your creatives about it, and the content strategy will fall into place. Last but not least, we have to think about how people are going to discover our content. We all think about Google, and we've gotten very good at it. But what about YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest, and Facebook? If you think about it, every time somebody shares something on Facebook, you get that little image that goes in the corner, right? Or people are sharing things on Pinterest or on Twitter. Are we thinking about the way people will share our content and the message that we'll be sharing? Quite often, we don't. And often, pharma shares are terrible. All you're sharing is the logo and one boring phrase. It doesn't tell them that there's some sort of good value prop if they click through. So we create this great content and we don't let the social network share it. And that's really bad, because at the end of the day, every time you have to bring somebody to your website, you have to pay for that, and that's expensive. That's not a cheap proposition. But if every person here were to share an asset, it would actually save the brand a lot of money, and we would still be counting those conversions and those key performance indicators. Content isn't limited. You have to stop thinking about your content just being on this beautiful Apple Mac monitor. You have to think that the person that looks at it here might be looking at it on a computer or even on an iPhone. And an iPhone should not just be a shrunk down version of your site that you scale up and you move around. There are ways to give people the content and information that they want and need on that device. If you're on a mobile device, you probably don't want the complete animation and the long form videos. What you want is a quick hit piece of information that will help people go, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a doc, or I need to get a place where I can get my script. And you also have to think about how it's going to be shared on social networks. If you're going to place your assets on YouTube, or if somebody else is going to do it for you, or how it's going to be shared on Facebook, if you're going to own that relationship, or if fans are going to be evangelizing. You have to think about it, and content strategy will help you think through all of those different nuances and situations. And people access content for different reasons. Remember, what they need when they're on this is totally different than what they need on this. Last but not least, think about your multi-phased launch. Have your designers mock up what that experience will be. Live it. We're a visual medium. Get in there and allow our teams to say, you know what, it's going to look like this at phase 1, here at phase 2, and when we launch our CRM Pill Plus campaign, here's what it's going to look like. It anchors everybody. It makes everybody working on the same page. And ultimately, it doesn't cost your client more money. It saves them money, because at the end of the day, everybody's not reinventing the wheel each time. So back to the definition. As I said, we circle full around. So content strategy plans for not just the creation, but the publication. And here's a key thing, guys. We are brands, and we're brand managers, and we're marketers. But at the end of the day, Web 2.0, that is, anybody can create content / Web 2.0, makes everybody a publisher. We have to think about it being a publisher. We have to think about how we're going to release content. Newspaper doesn't, I used to work at a newspaper. Newspaper doesn't just go to bed at night, print the paper, and then go, so what do you guys want to do today? No, they think about things in a publishing plan. You need a publishing plan. You think about how you're going to create things, how you're going to publish it, and then how you're going to govern it. The problem with governance is nobody does it. Usually left to an account manager who's busy trying to do something else, managing meetings, trying to enhance that relationship, trying to get sign-offs, trying to have that relationship. It's really hard for them to be knee-deep in paragraphs and key performance indicators. Great content strategy means that you have a person watching your back who not only understands content, but understands the channels and the technology behind it, and is advising you what the right thing to bring to your clients is. So it's creation, publication, and governance. But here's the last thing, and I hate to diminish it like this. It's useful and usable content. Guess what? That has nothing to do with marketing. It has everything to do with the user. If all we do is talk about us and what's important to us, we're not going to create a good experience. We have to create a useful, usable experience for the user so that they will go to the next step, because we're never going to be able to force them. It's too easy to click away. So this is essentially what the official definition of content strategy is. Here's your action plan. Ask a lot of questions. If you are starting a program, be it a creative person, an account or a strategy person, a project manager, or anybody, ask, have you thought about your key performance indicators? What are your analytics metrics? What's your rollout plan? How many phases of content are you going to do? What's your backout plan? What's your emergency plan? What content are we using? If you don't get all the answers to your question, you guys aren't ready to start creating content. We were brought in on a project that was it was for a site that was launched, and they pulled us into a room and they said, Okay, so we're going to get you content strategists involved. We have the copy written, the designs are done, we've moved it into LMR. What's our content strategy? And I was like, oh God, it's sort of like driving somewhere and then asking where we're going. So you need to ask a lot of questions. You need to be prepared to answer them, and if you're not, challenge your team and your content strategist. Figure out what your customer wants, what the marketer wants. And true story again, we were trying to set up a CRM campaign, and the client wanted to collect not just the email address and their social security number. Right. And does the customer want to get on a CRM campaign where they get a weekly email and give up their social security number? So we had to think about, what does the customer want? They wanted the lowest path to communication. They wanted to give about the least amount of information to get what they wanted. See what you already have. Again, your clients will love you if you mine content and data and information and graphics and logos and videos and say, yep, don't create this. You already have it. Here's how we can recut this or reconfigure this for a lot less money. They will really appreciate if you are re-amortizing content across multiple channels. Think like a publisher. Again, think Lord of the Rings. Every time you walk in, think Lord of the Rings. I'm going to create as much content as I can at the lowest cost consistently, and then we're going to recut it and make it work for multiple channels. Last but not least, make it part of your process. You can't walk into this anymore like it's just some separate thing. We're not selling content strategy to clients and saying, hey, we're going to sell you content strategy. It's not like that. You might be able to sell them strategy and analytics, but at the end of the day, this is just part of the process. It's holistic. It lives in your process and a value add. Last but not least, we end on Grok. Now, Grok, as I said, was our first healthcare communicator, and he is the reason all of us are here today. And it's good to know that a properly formatted health message that's spoken in a language that everybody can easily understand and it's shared across multiple channels is as vital today as it was to the survival of humanity 600,000 years ago. Thank you.